Okay, so we are Fabrizio and Catherine from Unit 1, entitled K-Bits. Our unit studied the chronotypes of Seoul, which we intend to be the time and speed dimensions, imprinting into the space of the city and the life within it. We looked particularly at Seoul's dual dimension of fastness and slowness, which we studied through three lenses: fast versus slow urban development, fast-paced versus slow-paced human movements, and urban metabolism. Our work was rooted into primary research methods such as walking in the city and the experiential mapping. And
so we divided our students into three groups and examined Seoul, which is a site with a concentration of fast and slow chronotypes. We thought that the exploration of Seoul would attune us to the city's chronotypes, allowing us to register transitional spaces that go unnoticed, that could anticipate the future of the city. And we asked each group to record their explorations with their phone cameras and create edited documentaries with their visions about Seoul's chronotypes. The groups use their videos to keep questioning, analyzing, and reformulating their observations about the chronotypes of Seoul. And it was a fun process, I think. Then we asked the students to propose design interventions that facilitate or oppose those observations, illuminating us to the next K something. So we have three proposals: K zone, K forest, and K views. And we'll start with K zone.
we will have 10 minutes presentations and 10 minutes discussions for each group. We will start with the video.
Hello, my name is Jisoo Kim.
I'm Jungguhan. I'm Dong Park.
Let's start the video first. This video is a comparison between when we pass the same distance by bus and when we walk. You can check it in the video. You can move much faster and more efficiently when you move by bus. However, you can also see that you miss a lot of details compared to when you walk. The picture on the left side of the screen is a scene from a video, and the right is a picture of the definition of fast and slow that we defined. Our definition of Seoul's fast and slow is that the pace of urban development is fast and slow to be missed due to urban development. The video is a metaphor for things that are missing as the city develops at a rapid pace. This is a picture of Seoul by ear, showing that the fast urban development of Seoul. Seoul is one of the cities that has developed really fast. So we thought that there would be something missing in the process of development. This is Uljiro, the site of our project. Since the 1950s, Uljiro has been the center of manufacturing industries, such as metal processing, lighting, ceramics, textile manufacturing, sewing, and printing. With the recent retro craze, many young people have begun to gather. Calling Uljiro as Hipjiro, they discover historical and cultural values in Uljiro's alley, where ironworks and printing shops are made alike. On the left is the current map of Uljiro. Uljiro is currently included in the redevelopment project, and the part marked on the map will be created as a residential and commercial complex.
From this article, it can be seen that residents and merchants in Uljiro are currently opposed to Uljiro redevelopment project. It is necessary to improve the old part, considering the utility and development of the city. It should be considered whether it is necessary development to damage places where various people gather, which have a special historical character like Uljiro. Therefore, we would like to introduce 5 strategies that can slow down the development and protect the lives of residents. Our strategy is production, learning, exhibition, performance, large-scale installation. This image is an axonometric that describes our program. The first is production. Existing stores can be operated as they are so that the manufacturing history of Uljiro can be continued. The second is learning. Craftsmen in Uljiro provide vocational training and experience space. The third is exhibition. By utilizing existing buildings, various spaces become exhibition room. The fourth is performance, short-term or guerrilla artwork that anyone can participate in. The last is large-scale installation. Uljiro is the center of the manufacturing industry. An installation that expresses the symbols of the manufacturing industry are placed in the outside space to attract people. This is the map that categorizes Uljiro stores by type. On the right is the area where we propose preservation. The reason why we do not propose to preserve everywhere is that urban development is essential and not bad, but it must be accompanied by preservation. These are images that represent our proposal. This museum shows the history of urgent manufacturing. Street itself is made into a museum by tearing down walls or small buildings or connect rooftops in an alleyway. Space where you can experience various manufacturing industry in Ujiro will be created using existing buildings. It includes pottery workshop, engineering workshop, a lighting shop, and hardware store. And it is a cross-sectional view of Ujiro, where the program we talked about is applied. In the four-story building, the first and third floors are production spaces, and the second and fourth floors are workshops and exhibition spaces. It is a street view of Ujiro. As can be seen from the image, there is a large-scale installation on the street, and the sign and graffiti are preserved, which are characteristics of Ujiro. This can not only occupy space and slow down development, but also attract people's attention. You can also check out the public artworks made of mirror that shows a comparison between the future and past of Ujiro. This image represents Ujiro, where the city continues to develop but maintains its existing appearance. This is the future of Ujiro that we imagine. This is a close-up view, and this is a distance. We want Ujiro to be a space where people and city who run fast let know the value of slow. Thank you for your listening.
Yeah. We have two points for the three. We can try, yeah.
Appreciate it, the video and Thank you for the presentation. I appreciated the video and the kind of the rigor that you took to do your analysis. I think one thing that's maybe for me that was missing, a missed opportunity was, a space for production is dependent on movement and flow of materials. And I think in order to kind of maintain this logistical integrity, I think those kind of ideas about how the current Uchiro manufacturing areas work actually, because if you go there, like they can make everything, right? Like when I have a project, I'll go there and ask an Ajashi to construct all this stuff, and they have a logistical system that they already use. And I think once you kind of incorporate these kind of micro scale idea and then incorporate it with these bigger developments, I think logistics and movement of flow of materials and people is something that needs to be considered. But and considering that the project was a 10-day project, it's not a thesis project and so forth. So I think that is something that could have been developed. But I think overall the ambition of the project and the idea behind how these kind of micro, very important kind of historical and manufacturing hub can coexist with the massive development that is about to come is a very important idea. So congratulations on the project, and best of luck.
I can go next, I think. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I found the video composition really clever in a way that, by repeating the left side as a faster pace experience from the vehicle, to the walking experience on the right, we see the clear comparison in its duration of the experience, but also, the vertical elevation experience versus the perspectival street view experience, which you frame it as a very slow and detailed experience that we can have as a, countering example. And I see that you value that within the project. This is not really a criticism because, again, I completely agree that, within the 10 days exploration, you've done so much. But maybe a thought expansion for your future thesis development after this experience. I need to, I don't know, I had a bit of a difficulty why you call it K zone. And maybe it's not really important, and why the fascination of the slowness in the first place versus, why do we value slowness more than, fast development? Because, if we borrow references from like Andrea Branzi, he is very much of a promoter of weakness. We normally conceive it as a really bad idea, the weak and, fragile, but actually the theorists like Zygmunt Bauman and from the liquid modernity, he actually promotes the idea of the weakness because it's because of its plasticity and flexibility of what it can become, And in relative terms, these new developments are not always problematic. Development itself, redevelopment itself, I don't think is problematic. I think the way certain institutions decide on what to be kept, preserved in such manner is what we really need to question as a kind of experience that we want to preserve and we value are not entirely up to us. It's mostly driven by the capital flow, let's say. So I think the real, the captivation and the real value that we have to actually promote through these videos and your proposal is the street experience that you value and what kind of, the spatial enclaves that we are surrounded by and we are experiencing every day and soon will disappear and without knowing how it will be replaced by. Yeah. So, going back to the question, why slow is better, why romanticization of the past is something that we are really attached to. I mean, you are almost preserving, a part of the block as it is with the addition of sculptures and so on. So I think museum is also very problematic, typology in itself, not your proposal, but, typologically it is because it already curates, it already defines what the good values are. And, it always is tied is reorganization of, forms and values with the very, minor, powerful person dictating that. So I think what's really interesting as a question that comes up from this proposal is the spatial feature versus the program. So you're clearly maintaining the programs, but not really the spatial feature. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing. I think in order to do, the persuasion of the preservation of the program, does it mean that we don't have to keep any of the fabrics or we don't have to keep any of the, the spatial features already exist as long as we preserve the program? Or do we want to really maintain certain parts of the building elements or the experience of the block scales and the city pocket spells and space and etc.? So, I mean, to summarize, I think, what you want to investigate through this exploration can be framed a bit sharper in the future because they are all really fascinating, I think. So as a 10 days exercise to expand on, ideas from the walk, I think is absolutely fascinating. So well done.
Okay, so yeah, so first, I don't get it exactly what the relationship between that kind of documentation, the video documentation, and this kind of final the proposal. Because maybe you try to want to use that kind of video kind of use as a tool to provide this kind of proposal, or that kind of like a kind of separate two different ends? Can you explain a little bit more about that, the video idea? We use the video as a metaphor of our simple fashion. So in the video, when the video, when we take the bus, we can miss the details of the street and the building, detail of the store or something else. And from this, we think because of the pace of urban development, we can miss something important or something important places for us. So I think the video is a metaphor of our project. Okay, so because metaphor is kind of a little confusing term to architects, a little bit, I guess. So that's the one thing. And another one is because when I was in like your age, Ultro wasn't that hip, cool site at all. It's just really like a manufacturing area. All the like old people just work there. And then these days, some of the hipsters kind of found out, oh, this is kind of cool, and then we can just set up some cafe and some bar and that kind of stuff, and getting kind of mixed these days. But at the end, in this idea, in this future proposal, it's kind of all that kind of giant scale manufacturing areas kind of shrink down, or just everything is just erased, and then only kind of, in my understanding, hipster portion just left here. It looks like that. Then in that case, it can be really kind of like mixed, cool, hip, cultural can be remain, or it looks like to me more like a theme park or something like that. Really, like, I don't want to say that, but kind of shallow, like cafe, museum idea, that kind of stuff. So what is your kind of position exactly about this kind of cool, hip culture of this culture in these days or for the future? What do you want exactly? Maybe like small amusement park in the apartment area, so they can enjoy the historical site and enjoy the cafe, as you said, and look or learning the manufacturing skills for hobby. And you think the small scale amusement park can be this thing. Okay. Yeah, amusement park is really kind of brave term, I think. So I like that.
Yeah, I have one more very key comment I'm gonna say. Actually, what you've done so far for 7 weeks is good, I think, but it should be, I think, a little bit more realistic further, I think, because it's very tough site to do that, I think. So if you wanna design like that way, I think you have to be very consider about timeline or time zone, how to approach as slow as possible. So you have to be very strategic and have to be very smart in order to maybe insert some kind of program and some building in order to make a very slow list things. So it should be think about, I think, later on, I think. Thank you.
Hello, we are Unit 1. My name is Is Chan. And my name is Taehoon Lim. Start the video. We title is K Forest. We made an analysis video of the material's speed. We felt that street and steel and plastic were used and thrown away quickly, and wood and stone were used in a relatively slow space. As I watched the video continuously, I felt that the space with tree was moving slowly. As we have looked for the trees of Seoul, we looked out for especially street trees,
And the image is the 10 most planted trees for street trees. It is plane tree, zelkova, cherry tree, ginkgo tree, retro fringe tree, pine tree, buckeye tree, and silver maple tree, locust tree, and it was metasequoia. As we look about the trees around the Seoul, we found out that absorption of carbon dioxide by the forestry was about 4,006,000 ton per year, and CO carbon dioxide absorption by street area were 3,693 ton per year. So it was about 0.67 of forest area. The difference were made mostly by the area difference between forest and street, but there is some research now going on that street trees doesn't work as sufficient for air filter for the absorption of carbon dioxide, and researchers have found out that some part of the street trees are actually breathing out more carbon dioxide than it's breathing. And the reason for this circumstance is that street trees have their limit in growth because of the limited space they are planted in street area, and how they are cut in shape for the street, for that street could look more nicer. I will show you the two different type of trees and how they are cut as street trees. So this one is broadleaf tree, and it is more rounded shape when it's cut. And next page is, it is needle-leaf tree. It's its shapes more sharp in when it's cut. So this is the illustration of how ginkgo tree, and when it's placed on street areas and forest areas, and you can see the difference in shape when it's placed in like in street areas. Also, this is for the plane tree when it's on the forest area and when it's cut in the street areas. So our proposal is to switching the manner of how building is first built and the trees are planted, to trees are first to consider and reshape the building as the trees grow bigger.
Seoul is changing rapidly destroying the forest, nature and tree. So we worked in the form of trees in the forest taking over the city again. We decided on the random site and set the site 흥인지문 in the nearby of Dongdaemun DDP. 흥인지문 Gate has a long history of Seoul, and it feels like a slow space because it wants soil and stones. The tone you see on the right can watch all the town, but people move around very quickly in it. So we try to change the speed of the city through the trees. The site has an area of about 46,000 square meters, and we will show you how to change it in timeline. What you see is now and 1 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. Trees generally grow for about 20 years, and after that, the growth rate was low. Over time, tree created gap in busy cities, cutting building and control the city's speed. We planted ginkgo tree in section A. Ginkgo tree will grow to an approximate radius of 20 meters and a height of 20 meters. If you look at the elevation section view, you can see that the nearby buildings are cut as the ginkgo grows. Through this project, we imagined a situation in which wood is given priority of the use of wood for the city. Thanks for your listening.
Thank you for your presentation. This was quite interesting. But actually, I have a question to the speaker. This is for the question to the first team as well. Their document was really nice and interesting, but I don't see the strong link to the site. So this project as well, I think it would be much better if they make a document based on the site. But I guess your approach wasn't like that. So they made a document first, and then from there they found the idea, and then they choose the site. Was the way of was there any specific reason why you do that? Yeah.
Why is that important? Because
for the Israel project,
I think the new development
mhm,
for Ichiro is already not considering, right, the site.
mhm.
I mean, to a degree, except for the Seonsanga that they're keeping. So I wonder why that question is important.
Because I thought for the first project as well, it would be much nicer, or I can understand better for the project if they made a document document about the Israel. So this one as well, and it was really interesting to see the fast and slow comparison, and also so when you see something fast, you see the overview. So they look at the overview of the city. Then when it becomes slow, you try to zoom in and you focus on the material, right? Then suddenly they jump into the forest, and I couldn't really follow the link. So I thought it would be nicer if they made a document based on the site, and this one as well. It's on the site near the Nandamun, I think, and if they made a document about this area, it would be but that's how I think I can understand. Yeah. About the final proposal, so you are proposing the methodology, or I think the approach is really brave, but for me overall the practice is a little bit too unrealistic.
I guess I think it's a good comment about the disconnect between the site
Yeah.
and the documentation. The idea initially was that We did walk around Utsuro, but in some cases, the students found different questions as they were looking. And then in the case of this group, I think the observation about materials led them to see tree as a material, which then led them to Tongdaemun. So in a way, it was kind of a non-linear process. But I agree that the document, the video doesn't necessarily connect with the site. So that's a good point. And then in terms of, I guess, the unrealistic nature, I think in a way it's a provocation and an open question. So the power comes in a way from the kind of literal answer to something they observed.
I mean, if I just add on to this discourse that we are having, I absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you very much for the presentation. Clearly, it is a provocational approach, and I think to a degree, of course, you didn't really present in this manner, but it questions about the preservation and what's important and how the city actually sets up the priority, what needs to be kept. And I love the absurdity. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the, like Camus' work that, I think when we face like as extreme as near death like this, like a death of the building or the city planning, we can seriously question about like what we are fundamentally like, basing on our assumptions of the development of the city and the preservation and so on. So I think as a diagram, this raises so many questions about how we are actually educating students to, preserve and build with specific material, how to deconstruct, how to demolish, and what kind of new building material that needs to, that we need to accommodate in order to actually to serve this proposal. So, I mean, if we want to slice the building like a cake, we cannot build with concrete. We cannot really build with wood. And what else then? I mean, we cannot really build in the same way that we do. So I think it raises so many questions about the, the priority and the, the conventions that we are actually using in the building development. And I think, I mean, just not just because to be honest, I think this like a linkage between previous exercise to new exercise. I don't think it really matters, especially within 10 days, but it really raises to like next question that's also really interesting for me is that we are educating students to build with concrete that will not be used because of the net zero policy that we are facing. So what are we doing? Actually, why are we not really catching up with the industrial development or the governmental policy? What is the new materiality? What is the new development? We really need to radically rethink. So, I mean, thank you very much for bringing this excellent proposal.
Thank you for the presentation. I also echo the concern about lack of site-specific concerns. I think your proposal is very interesting, but I think it's architecture a lot of times is about framing the question the right way, and I think you could have easily done that, which you kind of map the kind of streets that you saw, and I think there are certain kind of street trees that are available. So I think the presentation could have been framed better with site specificity, but regardless of the context and whatsoever, I actually really enjoy the sort of the methodical research of how trees are kept. Korea has an FAR and zoning ordinance law for daylighting, right? So when I saw this section, I'd imagine, oh wow, we can make a zoning law about like the street trees, about how we can now start to think about, the building angles. We have to build in a diagonal, but what if we have to build in a diagonal from the grounds for the trees to grow? And I thought that was very powerful when you guys show that section image of how the trees are kept. And now if we want the trees to fully grow, our buildings have to adjust to it. So, that building is never going to happen. But actually, with your methodology, we can change the way new buildings are built, which I thought was very powerful. The other thing that the one thing that was missing is trees aren't just the things that are above the surface. It's actually about below ground. And there's a whole network of, if you look at sort of how street trees are planted, there's this entire system, how water flows, how the earth are placed in. And I think that needs to be considered. But overall, the idea was very provocative and powerful. So congrats on the project.
Okay, so before we start the video, we like to give a brief explanation. So our studio brief was to kind of explore the city with your body and also by taking footage of it through a video. But we kind of thought that having a video in your hand to film while walking inevitably kind of affects the walk itself. So as a way of kind of an experiment, we want to kind of get unfiltered footage of the city. So basically, we thought that filming the camera intentionally was a way of a filtered view, because you decide what to shoot, when to shoot it, and how to shoot it in every which way. So we came up with a device that we decided to call Unfiltered. And the rest, I think, would be explained in the video.
Well, since we are running out of time, we will skip a little bit the video in the middle. I think we can have further explanations after.
And because since this was more of like an experiment, the three of us each had our points of view. So we had three separate projects for each of us, and the first one will be explained by Song Ju.
I'm going to read. I will have my presentation for how. Our project title is Stay You, and my part is recording as a subtitle. Before I start my presentation, our aim is questioning about method giving generation such as photo and video. and we explored sites using mobile device and camera. When we walked in the city, we tried to find something to think about and talk about, and we trusted them with camera. So the camera in the phone can be observation tool. There are three ways to use the device: taking photo and video of interacting, and putting camera and phone body to change angles. Software is not turning on camera and recording all the time without checking the monitor. I will show my work about site visit, digital and angle. First of all, can you please get the image? You can see that on the picture side and the dot. First of all, these days young people in home want to have time to relax and think in nature or garden to slow down their mind. At this point, from some of experts and media say that people are feeling mom. This image can also be an example of feeling mom and a tendency of people who want to have feeling mom they want to see. Next, I drew the map unconfessly without seeing any kinds of map from other sources. First one is here. Around road along Ujulu, there were so many closed doors related to vacuum or ornaments, and trusses were out of material space. Second one is we took a rest after finishing site visit, and at small stairs. And when we felt to come back to campus after site visit, we find a place to relax and have small chat. There might be stairs to all others house. Lastly, I will show the process of what we make as a device to record. First, we put camera in name card of the record body to record continuously. Second, we rotated name card and made the whole web hand to put camera into name card. Third, we changed angles by putting camera on several parts of the body. Next turn will be taking
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, Doctor. Moving on, this is genuinely from Unit 1. Yeah. So we want to keep we want to hear a lot of opinions from you. So I will try to keep this as concise as possible. So buildings as cameras. Okay. So if you recall, this is the first scene from our video, and it demonstrated our methods of filming. In a way, it was a new device. It was a device for proving the hypothesis that the spatial experience with and without the camera would vary. And they did. Normally, we shoot something that comes to our mind, something of interest, and we repeatedly reconstruct those images in our mind, and that's how we make our spatial experience. And also, if we spot something of interest, every single feature of our camera, say the exposure or the contrast, the angle, it's tuned to fit our attention. So these can be called filtered views. The very act of taking a picture implies a substantial amount of subjectivity. So we thought the impact of these filters was easily overlooked. So our next step was to translate this device into an architectural one. Hence the building as a camera. So in typical buildings, windows are there to let in light and also to allow us to view outside. Their shape reflects the intentions of the designer on what can or cannot be seen from the building. So this makes the window a very good analogy to the camera we were using. So invert the transparent and opaque parts of the building, and the result is a direct connection to the unfiltered method. Instead of the parts where windows would normally be placed, as you can see in the picture, we would gain visual data from the peripheral parts and the gaps between opaque spaces. In other words, the new view, the unfiltered view represented by the automated camera, is now translated into a building. People observe the identical scenery differently, and your interpretations on and through this architectural device, we believe it will also vary. So we hope it will enrich our discourse on the city. Then I think you might ask, what did you learn? What was your interpretation on and through this experiment? Kyungmin will continue from here on that matter.
So as my colleague just explained, I will be focusing more on the material and the content of the footage we recorded through the unfiltered device. So through the unfiltered footage, what really caught my attention was how the trash could be seen as like the detail that would catch your attention. Because normally when you're walking, you don't see it as a detail, you just see it as trash. But through the footage where we put the camera on our foot or on our hands, it was kind of focused on the trash and in a way that it was like telling a narrative through the trash. So for example, just one of the random alleys that we took a walk in where they had cigarette butts, industrial waste, plastic bag boxes, newspapers, and so on. So we thought this was more than enough detail to be telling a narrative. And so with my interest in the trash, we revisited the site, and I kind of learned that because of the site being so dense in the personal owned press companies and small stores and shops, there was an ongoing flow of trash, and trucks like these kind of came like numerous times a day randomly to pick up all the trash. So something I wanted to do was kind of make the trash the protagonist of the city. And because our site was digital and the buildings are tightly dense, the building blocks are small, I decided to kind of stack the garbage vertically instead of having it like shipped out every 30 minutes. And since the vertical stacking of the garbage kind of makes a structure, a building, a tower in itself, I want to provide a view that was unfiltered from the city and to see the structure as it is. So I added catwalks on the level where it was above the existing city. So there needed to be two devices. The first one, the catwalk that I added, it was designed to be placed on top of the existing roof, and also suspended by wires, again attached to the existing buildings. And the second device was the trash structures themselves. They were made up of cubes that I kind of got the elements from kind of like a container where it kind of automatically locks on proper contacts. This in its own way can kind of self-support itself. So the trash would be gathered in the cube, moved to the yard, and then stacked up vertically. And of course, these two work coherently. The height of the structure itself could be a meter of how much trash there is, and the catwalk could be used to see the content of the trash in a more detailed view. And so this is the view of the trash city that I see. So it can be seen as a city that has an ongoing construction, that has an ongoing cycle of construction where the towers are constantly being rebuilt and destroyed again and again. So that was it for the presentation.
So what does the camera building does in this trash city? They're separated project or?
Yeah, they were designed as separate projects through our own interpretations of what we thought was the key point of the research.
Okay, so kind of 3D separated project like that.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe to the second. So the video, everything kind of smooth and different. How does the large scale camera really work? And that kind of step down in terms of completion. I don't know how does it move, how it moves work really. So kind of I mean it's hard to understand this building work in kind of urban context, kind of like that problem.
So what the analogy I was trying to show here was more of a methodological one rather than focused on context. So, well, the trivial details in these pictures, they might show a little bit that they are in here in Ritsudo, but that was because we researched on the site, not necessarily because they had to be located here. We wanted to show that this was a method. So what we are trying to focus here is that the camera, whether the camera is used, if the camera is used intentionally, we are actually looking at the screen and we are filming it. It has an effect on our experience. And if you're not, if it's dangling, say, an automated shot, then what it takes pictures of is different, and our experience without the device is also different. And in this building, we normally have windows to see outside and let the light in. So that kind of it reflects the intentions of the designer. And rather than inverting that part, we thought we would be able to give people a whole new perspective on how they view the city. It's a very different visual impact, and we thought that people can gain a new interpretation of the city. That was the object of this method.
Oh, if I might add something to that, the way I kind of thought that the trash was a detail of the city, seen in the picture down below, the feet movement. So for example, it could be dancing, it could be running, it could be wearing a certain shoe. So those kind of details might be able to deliver more unfiltered views of what might be going inside, or vice versa, what could be going on outside from the inside.
So, and then also the third one, the third series. I really like how much usually this is that your final for the buildings. So you spend a lot of time and a lot of like effort and money to build that kind of idea, but eventually what people really see is just kind of like a set of strategy. And but as a professor in Korea, I've never seen any kind of student design that kind of using this project for the school project. So I really appreciate it. You are a student in Korea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I really like that kind of. I really want to like more Korean students just try to develop some kind of this kind of useless, meaningless project. Yeah, trace is a really small idea, but at least you try to build something for nothing. It doesn't really mean your like initial meaning, but to me it's kind of interesting enough to me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I can't, but I really don't. Thank you. Sorry, again. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really enjoyed the all three projects. I think it has a. Sorry, I don't have this screen.
I think it's all three projects are about changing the perception essentially, and the first one is a bit more relatable to the stalker the archipelago of psychoanalysis technique. and remapping our world in, you know, our way. So it's a really good trigger to move on to the second and the third projects. And the second one is a bit more, you know, the precise on, you know, by masking, clipping, and, you know, questioning the conventionalized, you know, perception and, you know, reciprocal mechanisms that we have and we constantly, you know, like repeat ourselves. So, you know, actually achieving alternativity through a building form, I found it really, you know, brave and really interesting. And the third one is the, you know, the classic flip of the protagonist, you know, change perception project. So, but at the same time, we can recognize Uichiro. I mean, this project, these are, except for the second project, I think the first and the third one within this project are very site specific, actually. You know, and this I can really relate that, you know, framing Uichiro, the whole area soon to be developed are trash. You know, it will go away. You know, it will disappear, and it really depends on the value that we kind of define what it is. And you know, the production process itself is actually representing as much as the, you know, the deconstruction and the remedial process. So you know, this verticality of the waste is actually, you know, the, I think can be read in the other way if you mirror it to the production. And actually, if we go to Uichiro already, it's so hard to distinguish what's trash and what's new anyway. So I found this super interesting and, you know, really enjoyed it as a representational mechanism of what's already happening and what will happen very soon. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.